Where were we? I think it was somewhere between this.
All right, we'll call it a draw.
And this.
Stop! He's already dead.
Regrettably, no. Business Insider just put this up a couple of days ago, and it's already got the best part of million hits with the Hyperloop's greatest hit.
This is the future of high-speed transportation. It's 3.5 times faster than Japan's Shinkansen bullet trains, and even faster than a Boeing 747.
So, before I get on to the guts of this video, which is how a few pinholes will render an entire Hyperloop inoperable, with science, in stark contrast to what the actual Hyperloop fans say.
It's extremely easy to upkeep the medium vacuum in the Hyperloop.
But before we get to that, let's just briefly touch on this Business Insider video, shall we?
It's 3.5 times faster than Japan's Shinkansen bullet trains, and even faster than a Boeing 747.
Yes, that's right. Both of these ideas date back to the early 1900s. But one of these evolved into a viable technology, whilst the only thing that has improved on the other over the last 100 or so years is the quality of the computer-generated graphics.
It's 3.5 times faster than Japan's Shinkansen bullet trains.
Okay, so you've got a real bullet train on one side and computer-generated graphics on the other.
And even faster than a Boeing 747.
So you have a real plane being videoed flying on one side versus computer-generated graphics on the other. I mean, I really don't know how to say this. If you really think that if you can make it in computer-generated graphics, you can make it in reality, where are all our starships?
How can we be a 22nd century country when we're built upon the technology of the 19th century?
Well, that rules the Hyperloop out then, doesn't it? Because that's an idea about 100 years old.
Musk was elated with the results.
What this is really all about is advancing the state of transportation, trying new things that have never been done before.
This linear electric motor powers the model of the first British hopper train. The oval mountings are the hopper pads, and when in action, the hopper train runs virtually frictionless on a pad of air.
Passengers sit in a pressurized capsule that rides on a cushion of air.
Hundreds of sensors, and it can frickin' hover.
Shows how combining that magnetic levitation and a linear motor for propulsion could make a working train. And by the late 70s, British Rail adapted the techniques for a full-size version.
Thunderfoot makes fun of the Hyperloop linear motor demonstration. Sure, it wasn't a complete Hyperloop.
Successful high-speed runs this summer convinced American backers to promote this German system into the marketplace. They're looking for $500 million from investors to build a track 260 miles long from Las Vegas to Disneyland at Anaheim.
So you'll be able to travel from San Francisco to Los Angeles in about 30 minutes.
What we really intended to do with the Hyperloop was really to spur interest in new forms of transportation.
Because aeroplanes are now frequently delayed on short routes, they believe this new train could at last compete with air travel.
It's also a lot faster. You can basically get from downtown LA to downtown San Francisco in 30 minutes.
If all goes well, the world's first floating high-speed passenger service might just be completed before the end of this century.
It sounds fantastical, but it's closer than you think, and these students are at the forefront of that movement.
I think what this is really all about is advancing the state of transportation, trying new things that have never been done before.
Work in Essex County, page 98, right? Yeah, I read that too.
But it would be for a fifth mode of transports.
Were you going to plagiarize the whole thing for us? Do you have any thoughts of your own on this matter?
I have a name for it, which is called the Hyperloop.
The Hyperloop?
Hyperloop.
But is that your thing? You come into a bar, you read some obscure passage, and then pretend you pawn it off as your own idea just to impress some girls?
It's called the Hyperloop.
The Hyperloop?
Hyperloop.
That's Josh, a mechanical engineer who previously worked at SpaceX. He's now the co-founder and CTO of Virgin Hyperloop. It's a Hyperloop, magnetic pods levitating inside a tube at more than 1,000 kilometers per hour. In theory, you could go from LA to San Francisco in just 45 minutes, with tickets less than $100 one way.
Yes, that's what Elon Musk claimed about 10 years ago. And no one has taken those numbers seriously since then. Oh, with some notable exceptions.
He then goes on to say that Hyperloop would be extremely expensive. Again, he apparently ignored the relevant passages of the white paper.
The white paper. All praise to the white paper.
It's 3.5 times faster than Japan's Shinkansen bullet trains.
Look, let me show you what minimalistic research would actually look like. Let's take a look at Virgin Hyperloop's very own webpage about their proposed route, like this one, which they're claiming to build between Mumbai and Pune, which they say is going to take 25 minutes to go about 150 kilometers. It's 300 kilometers an hour, about 200 miles per hour, not even as fast as regular high-speed rail.
Stop! He's already dead.
Regrettably, no. Now, I'm going to tell you how this ends right now, because a lot of this stuff is grimly predictable. Virgin Hyperloop might get as far as building their 10-kilometer test track. That's maybe in the bounds of possibilities.
Virgin Hyperloop will be building its new certification testing facility in West Virginia in 2022, including a 9,600-meter track to be used for testing and establishing regulatory and safety guidelines.
But they'll never get anywhere near to this 600 miles per hour in a track that short, especially not with people in it. Hundreds of $1 million will be blown on that.
So, are you also excited about so many upcoming Hyperloop projects? Do you believe that Virgin Hyperloop 1 will be faster with their Indian Hyperloop track? Or will Hyperloop TT be faster with their Chicago-Cleveland version?
Hard to say, but probably they will be faster in India, because those countries, they just want to build stuff for prestige, and they want to be as fast as possible to be the first ones.
Oh yeah, the prestige of the world's first Hyperloop, which, even according to their numbers, will just be about as fast as high-speed rail. Not maglev or anything, just regular high-speed rail. But I'm going to make another prediction here. That's never going to happen. First of all, the train that they're proposing to build that in is utterly unsuited for this type of transport. Cool. So, perspective time. This is Virgin Hyperloop's test track. Not the red line. That thing there. That's their current existing test track, which is like 0.5 kilometer long.
Which is why this scene is so important.
Yes! That was so good! That was.
In order to get up to full speed, well, actually, yeah, you need about 20 kilometers, which is that sort of distance. And that's 20 kilometers has to be basically a straight line. If there are mountains in the way, you basically have to tunnel through the mountains. It's slow and that's expensive. Fortunately, Virgin Hyperloop decided they weren't going to build their test track there, but in the second most rocky place in America, which is in the Appalachians. And it turns out this is a 20-kilometer track. Their proposed track is only half this length. They're not going to be able to get up, even if they could. This is assuming that everything else is dead easy. The minimum distance you need to basically accelerate to top speed is 10 kilometers and then 10 kilometers to slow down again. Their test track is about half that length. And that's their $500 million Hyperloop center. Right, so now let's take a look. You keep that in perspective there. Let's go all the way around to where they are building this amazing new Hyperloop, which is going to be between Mumbai and Pune, which is about 180 kilometers. So, the test track that we were previously looking at would have been, their super long test track is 1/10 of the length of this route that they're proposing here between Mumbai and Pune. The thing is that, remember, for the Hyperloop, the track has to be amazingly straight, because otherwise, if you're going that fast, you've basically got to go in a straight line. If you've got a mountain range in the way, say, for instance, you have to tunnel your way through the mountain range. this ain't gonna happen anytime soon. And at that point, you really gotta ask yourself, hang on, like, what's the benefit of this new mode of transport again? It's going to go about as fast as regular high-speed rail, but no one's ever built one before, for reasons that will become very obvious by the end of this video. Yeah, in 5 to 7 years' time, this thing will collapse, just like Theranos. Now sure, Theranos got a long way with a box that they said would perform miracles. They got a company worth $9 billion.
This is Elizabeth's second public live interview. The first was at the Most Powerful Women's Summit in October.
Whenever there's a quote-unquote glass ceiling, there's an iron woman right behind it.
At her peak, she was worth billions of dollars.
The company that she started at 19 is valued at $9 billion. You own over 50% of it, right? Congratulations on that.
Basically claiming this little magic box here would perform miracles. It was going to do blood tests 10 times quicker than regular blood tests, 10 times cheaper than regular blood tests, and it was going to do 10 times as many tests as regular blood tests, and on a single drop of blood. Of course, the futurists loved it. It was so disruptive.
This is what happens when you work to change things, and first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
Well, not quite. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you. Then your company goes from being worth $9 billion to nothing, and you find yourself on trial for fraud.
Forbes magazine has downgraded the net worth of Elizabeth Holmes from $4.5 billion to nothing.
You own over 50% of it, right? Congratulations on that.
But blood tests are not an emerging field of science, nor is building a vacuum system. And in this video, I'm going to show you in graphic detail the Hyperloop killer. Anyway, where were we? Ah, yes. Now, if you've not seen my first two videos debunking these glorious Elon Musk fans who are the very living embodiment of this meme, except, in the end, rather than defending Elon Musk, they ended up drawing attention to his white paper.
We shall often refer to Elon's legendary Hyperloop white paper,
which I then eviscerated in my last video. I mean, the quick version is in his white paper, he says he needs some cooling, for which he is going to boil 300 kilograms of water, which makes about 300 cubic meters of steam, but he's going to store that on his pod somehow. And you just do the back of the envelope calculations, and his Hyperloop passenger pods don't look so much like this, but like this. Well, I'm sure this will have elicited a brilliant rebuttal from Sebastian and wax on. Thunderfoot has sent his loyal minions to downvote our video and flood our channel with trolling and hate comments. Not quite an accurate representation of what actually happened. I want to make this clear, you actually put up a video entitled Thunderfoot's Hyperloop Busted Video, All Mistakes Exposed, which was hilariously bad. I mean, damn, in your video, you practically begged for a response.
So let's go through all the arguments Thunderfoot brings forth against the Hyperloop and debunk them one by one.
Check and verify everything which is said in a video. Of course, this also applies to our videos.
Remember, you wanted this.
Yeah, these are the weird nerds who threw themselves in front of the valid criticism to defend Elon Musk, who are now complaining that they have no defense against the valid criticism. I mean, let's just read their first sentence again and see if we can detect a frequent mix of passive-aggressive butthurt combined with an overpowering essence of impotence at their own scientific illiteracy. Thunderfoot sent his loyal minions to downvote our video and flood our channel with trolling and hate comments. Really, this is very mature behaviour. We didn't expect anything else. Gosh, I'd forgotten I was dealing with adults here for a second. Oh, I'm so deeply sorry. Hang on, no, wait. I seem to remember that the other reason that you got a response video was because you were going through your comments, liking comments like, I hate Thunderfoot, and Thunderfoot is wrong about everything I've ever seen him make an argument on. Yeah.
Remember, you wanted this.
Don't worry, we will do a response video in time. Oh God, I hope so. Of course it will get downvoted again by the very devoted Thunderfoot fans. Reality check time. These are the people pointing at others and calling them fanboys who have lost their sense of reality in a cult. Right. I've got one word for you. Projection. Look, the simple truth is, if you had any real criticisms, I would have happily said, yeah, that's a decent point. The bottom line is, on the key issues, you had no decent points. You are the weird nerds throwing yourself in front of the valid criticism that was heading Musk's way, and then complaining that their searing slugs of truth kinda sting. Who apparently don't have much else to do than to harass channels who dare criticize him. Yeah, I'm still not seeing a lot in terms of rebutting the actual arguments that I made here. The irony is, of course, before they stopped holding comments for post, you might have noticed this one from Dave from EEV Blogs. This will not age well. And it was shortly after that that it ended up in my inbox in one form or another, and I laughed my arse off the whole way through your video, from the very first straw man.
Now he starts the video by saying that it's impossible to build a 600-kilometer long vacuum chamber.
Spoiler, I never said it was impossible. Just like I never said there wasn't enough iron on Earth to make a Hyperloop.
So yes, there's really enough steel on this planet left to build many Hyperloops.
You won't be fighting straw men, little lady.
Something wax on goes on for 5 bloody minutes going into the Earth's iron ore supplies. It's like, yeah, that's a brilliant debunking of an argument that I never actually made. Then, of course, when you get onto the science, it turns out that, yeah, most people on YouTube are actually smarter than at least one guy with a PhD in physics. Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes. But we don't stoop so low to call anyone stupid. No, that's true. You didn't say that I was stupid. We will take our time, though, as responding to trolls is not high on our agenda. Oh, really? Trolls now? Trolling with science. Yes, we made some mistakes, which, by the way, we acknowledged in a pinned comment already way back, and we apologized for that. But instead of admitting his mistakes, he reintroduces them, even doubling down on them. Well, to be fair, that's like saying he's doubling down on the Earth being a sphere. It might not be the sick burn that you think it is. Sure, our thermal expansion explanation is wrong, but therein lies the actual humour of the whole thing. It's not just that you got it wrong. You went into minutes of description of mathematics on something that most high schoolers would have understood was bullshit. How do you commit that strongly to something that is obviously wrong? In fact, if you'd started your video with an introduction of, "Hi, I'm Sebastian and this is Jixwan," you would have basically had everything that was correct in your video. And then they end it all with a massive burst of pure logic that completely contradicts everything else that they've just written. Anyway, have fun downvoting this video and flooding this channel with hate comments, smiley face. I think they've turned comments off, by the way. It triggers the YouTube algorithm and we get more views. Okay, enough of this crap. I'm going to leave the To the Future team to worry about their thumbs up on videos. I've got different plans. Today, we're going to show you the near impossibility of making a Hyperloop. Maybe if I had a vacuum system, say for instance like this, which can pull down to Hyperloop vacuum type pressures, the medium vacuum that Sebastian and Jixwan say is so easy to maintain.
That is the whole point of Hyperloop, not to have a perfect vacuum inside the tube, but a medium vacuum, which basically is very low pressure air.
Now we're going to put a single pinhole in it. How long does that take to depressurize? And even if I burn lots of energy by running pumps 24/7, how does that affect the final vacuum once the system has a single pinhole in it? And from this, we will be able to calculate the minimum sized hole you need to completely screw a Hyperloop. The warning signs were all there in the white paper. The white paper. All praise to the white paper. Sorry, not the white paper. The Elon Musk Hyperloop competition rule. You know, buried in the tube specs. You see, wax on here is quite clear about how easy it would be to maintain a medium vacuum in the Hyperloop, which is about a millibar.
It's extremely easy to upkeep the medium vacuum in the Hyperloop by just having vacuum pumps arranged along the length of the tube, say every 100 meters.
Cool. So this is a molecular dynamic simulation of the air that you're currently breathing. The red ones are oxygen molecules, the blue ones are nitrogen molecules, and the critical thing is you need a certain number of oxygen molecules per unit volume, because if you don't get those oxygen molecules, your metabolism stops and you chemically asphyxiate. Now this simulation is actually pretty accurate, most notably in the ratio of the size of the molecules to the distances between the molecules. So this is what 1 atmosphere of pressure looks like. So let's reduce that from atmospheric pressure, that's 1 atmosphere, 1 bar, or 1000 millibar, and take that down to 1/10 of an atmosphere, which is about the atmospheric pressure at about twice the height of Mount Everest. So if you're exposed to an atmosphere like this, you asphyxiate really very quickly because there's just not enough oxygen molecules there for you to survive. But you'll notice that the actual distances between the molecules is getting fairly chunky here, and we're only down to 1/10 of an atmosphere. That's 100 millibar. We can drop that down another order of magnitude. We're now down to 10 millibar, and now you're getting lots of space between the molecules, and this is only 10 millibar. And then you go down to 1 millibar, which is about the pressure that they would have in the Hyperloop. So as you can see, you have got to get an awful lot of the air out of this tube to get down to 1 millibar in pressure.
It's extremely easy to upkeep the medium vacuum in the Hyperloop by just having vacuum pumps arranged along the length of the tube.
So I'm sure that Elon Musk's test track will be able to get down to at least this medium vacuum that is so easy to maintain. Right? What's that? They can only get down to 10 millibar. And that will take them half an hour. And be super expensive.
Because this is such a large chamber and it takes a lot of power and a lot of resources for us to pump it down, we want to make sure before we put the pods in here that nothing is going to happen to them under a vacuum. Different teams want to go to different pressure levels, but if we go down to like a fairly low level, it'll probably take about 30 minutes.
Well, don't worry. At least we can repressurize it in seconds. Remember, if you just open the door on the Hyperloop or you have a catastrophic failure, it will only result in a gentle wind going down the Hyperloop tube.
A medium vacuum, it would thus disperse much more. That means that we would see the colder air sink to the bottom in the tube, going first, with the warmer air being on the upper side of the tube and coming later. Therefore, the so-called shock wave wouldn't become a shock wave as in the case of a bump, but more a gradually increasing wind.
So you can repressurize it in seconds. Wait, what's that? It takes 5-ish minutes to repressurize. It's almost as if just opening the door on a vacuum chamber this size would be rather destructive. Anyway, for me, however, these numbers look pretty reasonable. And even to get down to 10 millibar in about half an hour or so, for me, that's not bad for a system this big. Okay, so here we go for a drive down the Hyperloop with apparently intermittent stops. Now I'm going to be generous and say that they've got a perfectly sealed tube that doesn't leak at all. And I'm just going to make the estimate that we've got a pump going. So the pump sucks out a bit of air every cycle or so. And I'm just going to make the estimate here. So it sucks out a certain fraction of the total volume of the Hyperloop, let's say every minute or something. So let's say they suck out 15% of the air of the Hyperloop in 1 minute. So that means that the proportions of this schematic here are about right. You're sucking about 15% with each cycle, and each one of those cycles takes about a minute. And in the next minute, they suck out 15% of what's left. Well, if they did that, and you go through the maths, you'll find out that you get down to about 10-ish millibar in about half an hour. So that would make this a pretty decent schematic for Elon Musk's test Hyperloop track. And I'll be fair, that rate of pumping is colossal. Now, in reality, their system probably isn't perfectly airtight. It's going to be leaking, and there's going to be some leak rate. And when that leak rate gets equal to the pump rate, you can basically pump forever and never get a better vacuum. You have reached the limiting vacuum. So what sized hole would you need in this tiny little miniature baby Hyperloop to render 10 millibar to be the limiting vacuum? Not the very easy to maintain 1 millibar.
It's extremely easy to upkeep the medium vacuum in the Hyperloop.
That Waxan and whatever think is so easy to maintain, but 10 millibar. So its tube is about 1.7 meters in diameter, so the cross section here is about 2.5 square meters. The length is, let's say, 1.5 kilometers. So we can calculate the volume of the Hyperloop as about 3,500 cubic meters. A cubic meter of air, by the way, weighs about a kilo. So this is about 3,500 kilograms of air, 3.5 tons of air, that sort of thing. That's how much mass of air there is in the Hyperloop. That's when it's at 1 atmosphere. Right, so we're going down to 10 millibar. That's still 10 times higher than the very easy to maintain moderate vacuum that Jixwan and Sebastian were defending. We've taken 99% of the air out of the tube. So instead of having 3,500 kilograms in the Hyperloop at atmospheric pressure, we have 35 kilograms of air in the Hyperloop at this 10 millibar. It's about a 1% atmosphere, that sort of thing. And each minute we suck a further 15% of this air out. So that means that we would be sucking out about 5 kilograms, 5 cubic meters of air at atmospheric pressure per minute. Cool. So we now know that the leak rate into the tube for this to be the final pressure has to be 5 kilos of air per minute. Well, a hole in a vacuum chamber leaks at basically the speed of sound, because gas molecules travel at about the speed of sound, and if there is nothing to stop them from going into the vacuum, they go into the vacuum at about the speed of sound. So all you need to know is the size of the hole, and then you multiply that by the speed of sound, which is about 300 meters per second, or some 20,000-ish kilometers per minute, and boom, you can instantly work out the size of hole in this entire Hyperloop for this to be the limiting vacuum. And it turns out it's a hole about 1.5 centimeters by 1.5 centimeters, about the size of a single bullet hole. And then boom, that's it. 10 millibars is the best pressure that you will be able to get on a system like this with massive, expensive pumping.
Because this is such a large chamber and it takes a lot of power and a lot of resources for us to pump it down.
Good. So there, believe it or not, you have human hair sat right next to a pinhole. We'll come back to that in a second. And that's all just to give you some scale. That's the cumulative size of the hole that you can have, and it renders all of your massive, expensive pumping obsolete. That's the cumulative size of the hole. However, if you want to get down to a millibar, your maximum size of your hole is about 10 times smaller.
Detail that in fact the Hyperloop will not contain a perfect vacuum, but low pressure air at a pressure of 100 Pascal, and it is therefore classified as a medium vacuum. A medium vacuum can be kept up with vacuum pumps every few hundred meters quite easily, as compared to what would be necessary to achieve an extremely high vacuum or absolutely perfect vacuum.
which is a cumulative hole size of that big. Yeah, it says any slightly defective weld, pinholes, leaky seal, anything. Do they have them like really frequently? Yeah, they do. They're like only 10 or so long meter sections. So they've got a seal of some sort every 10 or so meters, which the wildlife is loving. And if you want to get even better, so it's that you actually want to seal your system and turn the pumps off for, say, 90% of the time, and that means that your 1 kilometer Hyperloop can tolerate a single hole that size, or you know, maybe half a dozen pinhole leaks in the entire system, and you can't hold a millibar without pumping on it for at least 10% of the time. Yeah. But these are just calculated numbers. Maybe it would be more graphically clear if we looked at a real vacuum system. Good. So here we've got a piece of kit that is nothing other than a vacuum gauge here. It's attached to a flask with a single piece of aluminium just glued on there, which we're going to puncture later. And then there is a high vacuum tap up here. And at the back we've got the pressure reading of what's in there at the moment, which is 1 atmosphere. Now this thing is very inaccurate till you get down to about 10 millibar, okay? Now what you can hear at the bottom is a rotary pump, one of those guys. And that'll pull down less than a millibar. Right, so what I'm going to do is open it up to the full vacuum, and you'll see roughly how quickly it pumps down. So, yeah, it's a big pump going on a fairly small system, but even at that, you can see that it really slows down once you get down to millibar type pressures. And in order to just get this, to get it going this well, I've had that pumping for some time to get some of the vapor pressure out of the oil and to partially dry all of this system here. Now there are 2 places that I can seal this. I can close this tap here, which means that this is a really good vacuum seal here. But other than that, I've got it, there is some tubing up there, and I can close it off near the pump. So if I close it off near the pump, which has some fairly non-high vacuum stuff in the middle, so it's closed off now, you can see it's leaking. That's the system leaking, and fairly quickly we're getting up to 1 millibar, right? So that's now 1 millibar. When it's got -1 up there, it's like point whatever millibar. So it's leaking, right? So I'm going to open it up again, and it'll pump down again very quickly. Hang on. This, by the way, this is not bad for a rotary pump. For a rotary pump to get down to half a millibar, that's not bad. You can maybe get 0.01, 0.05 millibar off a rotary pump. To get this off is not so bad. So, we're sub-millibar vacuum in here at the moment. Now, at that, if I close it off at the high vacuum tap at the top here, it's now going to be a sealed system, right? So, there we go. It's a sealed system. So at that, I can turn off the main pump. I've just got that sealed up. Boom. And what you should find is, this might actually go up very, very slowly. What you're probably mostly looking at there is this hasn't been pumped down. Once you get down to less than a millibar, degassing surfaces and all that sort of thing, you've got to do it. So this is leaking away very, very slowly, right? Or it's outgassing or something. Either way, it's fairly slow. This, for a vacuum system, is pretty bloody good. Now what I'm going to do is I have myself here a pin. I'm going to put pinhole in my aluminium here, and we'll see what that does to our vacuum, okay? So we're just going to go for a single pinhole. Different location, see if that helps us out any. There we go, got it. Right, so that's what a pinhole does for you in terms of losing the vacuum. And just to show you that is actually just a pinhole, we can now actually go to the same system, but I'm going to go full pumping on it. Right, so at the moment, yeah, that was all just leaking through a pinhole, okay? We'll get that pinhole under a microscope in a second. Cool, so to put it all into perspective, I've now got a single one of my hairs taped right next to the hole. And the hole looks like that. If I give it a little nudge, you'll see that's actually the live image from the microscope. And to make it even more funky, what I can do is I can ultraviolet light, and really matter what it is, just shine it from underneath. Oh, ha ha! There you go. That's the hole. So hairs, just so you know, hairs are about 1/10 of a millimeter, 100 microns in size, and so the hole is half a millimeter, 500 microns, that sort of thing. But now I'm going to open this up and we'll see what the best vacuum we can pull is, right? So previously, you will recall, our best vacuum was less than a millibar, and a single pinhole in a kit like this now reduces us to about 20 millibar. And just to show that really is all there is to it, right? When I close up the pinhole, it gets better. If I close it hard, when I push my finger against it hard, you can see that we get down to, you know, millibar, almost sub-millibar. There you go, sub-millibar. And all it takes is to expose that pinhole again, and all of a sudden our limiting vacuum is 20 times worse from a single pinhole. That's why big vacuum systems are difficult. Now, honestly, I've seen that Hyperloop tube firsthand, and I'm surprised they managed to get it down to 10 millibar. It is interesting. So it's a continuous weld all the way around, yeah? So that's how they basically make the big tubes, is you go a steel plate and you weld it up, and then this is how they've actually joined the two segments, yeah? One is widened somewhat, and one is not, and I don't know whether they got an O-ring in there or what. I doubt it. I mean, fitting two tubes together like this is a complete son of a bitch. It really is. As you can imagine, we're at 19, so that's between 18 and 19, that one. And here's another one. So do they have them like really frequently? Not just, yeah, they do. They're like only 10 or so long meter sections. So they've got a seal of some sort every 10 or so meters, which the wildlife is loving. The joins on the tube were welds, which are good for holding vacuum, but a nightmare for maintenance and expansion issues. I mean, hell, think about it. This is merely a 1 kilometer long tube where you have about 100 full tube welds on it. And with all of those, you would have to check them for corrosion and structural integrity.
You know, even if I'm sort of wrong about the economic assumptions behind the Hyperloop, it would still be a really fun ride. Even if only one of it ever existed, it would.
A viewing port. And this is about right. That's about what you would need. Yeah, that's about right. It's an inch thick. For a real window, that's about what you need. As you can see, it's starting to accumulate stuff.
I really think this is an amazing opportunity for young engineers, inventors, and designers to really get their minds working on something that could change history. It's encouraging to see.
So with the viewing port, they apparently glued it on. There is no apparent seal on this whatsoever. So this is probably glued on. Which point I'm quite sure why you need... Oh no, there is an O-ring. There's an O-ring in here. There we go. As you can see, it looks like they painted over the O-ring at some point. Not the smartest of things to have done. And just for anyone who misses the understatement here, no one who works with vacuums seriously would paint over an O-ring, because the O-ring is the seal. And on the fittings, so these all run on copper seals. They're ultra high vacuum stuff. The low vacuum stuff tends to run on O-rings. Right, there's an O-ring in there, the black thing that you can see is an O-ring. In fact, yeah, good, excellent. I'm going to take this one apart. So this is a window, and there's the O-ring. So this is typically how O-rings actually look. Nice, polished surfaces that mate together like so. Yeah. As you can see, it looks like they painted over the O-ring at some point. Not the smartest of things to have done. So, Sebastian and Roxanne, I've got one question for you. If it's so easy to maintain a medium vacuum of merely just 1 millibar,
clearly stated in the white paper, will not be employed in the Hyperloop. That is the whole point of Hyperloop, not to have a perfect vacuum inside the tube, but a medium vacuum.
It's extremely easy to upkeep the medium vacuum in the Hyperloop.
why is it that Elon Musk himself could only get his test track down to 10 millibar? And that was with a massive amount of pumping. And I'll bet falling money that the elements have since taken their toll on that track. And really, I don't think I would believe it can even hold 10 millibar now unless I saw it firsthand. Remember, a single cracked weld anywhere on the entire system and it's all over. Yeah, so that's my prediction. 7 years till the total collapse of the Hyperloop concept.
Forbes magazine has downgraded the net worth of Elizabeth Holmes from $4.5 billion to nothing.
You own over 50% of it, right? Congratulations on that.
So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, drop a thumbs up on it, because everyone likes the old thumbs up on their video. Make sure you subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more content like this. And as ever, if you really want to support this channel directly, you can do it through Patreon. And I'll leave the links below, and thanks for watching.